Our laws as it pertains to substances are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way. He was an alcoholic because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous. I'm a doctor, for sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that? I'm just saying, you go to treatment before you kill people. I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals. Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want to help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say.
There we are. Now I have a microphone. Hey, everybody over at Restream and Clubhouse. Thank you for being here. Also, well, I mean, it's obvious I'm talking and they don't hear my voice. But Susan, you've had a busy day.
Well, you were trying to like instruct me on things that you sent me while we were hot on the mic, and I turned it off and then I forgot.
Oh, that's what
I'm multitasking and I'm not.
I am not blaming you. That's for sure.
Not my fault.
Enough on your plate. It's been not Caleb's fault. Been a busy couple of days, Susan, right? Yeah. Okay. Right. There's some interesting stuff on Restream, some deep references to various things over at your mom's house. We are going to go record some more stuff at your mom's house very, very soon. So expect to hear new shows soon enough. I think is Wallene still up there, or is it Chris up now? Susan, do you know what the show is?
Chad
Wallene. And then Chris has a chance to rebut, shall we say, what Chad is up to. So if you're privy to that war, this will be very interesting to you. Today, nothing to do with any of that. We are going to talk about
It's a cute show.
The one with Chad?
Yeah, I like Chad. He's smart.
So how about that?
And he's also polite.
So Susan gives Dr. After Dark a good review.
Yeah, I do.
That is not. She does it very casually, but those don't come easily. So make note, everybody. that is it stops me in my tracks. Like, okay, you liked it, great. Let's see what that translates.
I really like it because I don't have to do it.
Yeah, well, interesting. Today we reorganize things a bit before I leave. Again, I'm leaving on a hiatus for about 3 weeks. Back on June 10th, 11th, around in there. That's when we will be back in with you guys. So appreciate your patience on that. But Cate Shanahan contacted me about a topic that is in the news, which is the baby formula crisis. Of course, Cate is a nutrition expert, a metabolism expert, board-certified family physician, 20 years of clinical experience. Well, I can't see. You know what, Susan? There's a bunch of stuff in front of the screen, so I can't see what... I can't see what Caleb is trying to tell me. Maybe you better tell me, Caleb. We might do some shows this weekend. Okay, we'll keep an eye out for that. If we do them, pay attention. That would probably be Saturday if we do that. Sunday is going to be a shit show, so I don't see how I could possibly do that. But Cate Shanahan, again, nutritionist. She is somebody, and a family practitioner, someone whom I go to for nutrition information, caught my attention in her book, Deep Nutrition. But it wasn't just that caught my attention. It was when I spoke with her, I discovered she'd been trained as a biochemist. By the way, the FatBurn Fix is her best-selling book. It's available right now. But she said to me, look, nutrition, biochemistry of nutrition is vastly too complex for else to say much about. But there's a couple things I can say for sure about fat metabolism. And I thought, that is somebody I can listen to, because the reality is just the stoichiometry, just the biochemistry of nutrition is so fantastically complex. Please welcome Cate Shanahan. Cate.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Dr. Drew.
You bet.
Yeah.
You bet.
So I hope our delay isn't delaying isn't that bad, but so I really appreciate having you back, having me back on this show, because I want to talk about a topic that's really near and dear to my heart, which is feeding babies. And right now our country's kind of in a crisis, scrambling to be able to feed our babies without the infant formula.
Yes, I want to get into that, but I want to do a little nutrition talk first before we get into that. Just so people understand your training and stuff, and then so they can contextualize your recommendations. So was it you that tweeted something about caffeine? I retweeted something where somebody said, here's how caffeine works in the body. And it's a sort of a stick figure or a sort of an outline of a body. And it's coffee, and then the little figure's drinking it, shows it going into the stomach. Then it says magic, and then it says energy coming out of the hand. And I thought, that, although that's a cartoon version, that is not all that far off of what I hear frequently as descriptions of how nutrition works. The narratives they tell are about as simple as that, as compared to how infinitely complex the reality is. You know what I mean? It's essentially they're just saying magic.
I wish I could take credit for finding and retweeting that, but no, that sounds hilarious. But you're right, because what I deal with is battling against that magic all the time. And a big part of the problem is that we have like just sound bites to go on, right? Like, and when it comes to nutrition, the sound bites that we have heard over and over and over again and have come to believe as if they're just gospel truth are things like fat makes you fat, cholesterol clogs your arteries, and salt causes hypertension. None of that is actually true. And when you look at the big picture of nutrition, you find so much more. You find that it's so much more interesting than you very often hear. It's not about finger wagging, it's about celebrating. And that's kind of, so my background, I became interested in this because I actually had a really severe health problem about 20 something years ago, and I couldn't walk. It was making it hard for me to work. And I happened to be living on the island of Hawaii at the time, which is really a different world. It's really a window back in time in terms of how people had a relationship with food. The relationship with food of people who were my patients back then was so much richer and so much more complex, and it was so much more central in their lives, and it made them so much healthier that it inspired me to radically review everything that I had learned in medical school, like those sound bites, as if they were gospel truth, and come to discover that they were absolutely not true. And the only reason I could do that was because I had a background in biochemistry, and a lot of this boils down to the biochemistry of cholesterol and certain fats. So what I discovered when I was doing this research was that the way that we feed children radically affects them for the rest of their life. Like we have the ability to control things like how tall a child is going to grow. I mean, it sounds incredible. Perhaps it sounds like science fiction, but all the science, the real science, explains how that works. And that's why I was so inspired that I had to start writing a book. I mean, I was a doctor. I had never written much more than a patient note in my whole life. And I ended up writing this 500-600 page book about the power of nutrition, especially real nutrition, not our modern idea of it, but traditional nutrition, about the power that it has to impact us our whole lives, but especially in childhood. And that's why this whole infant formula debacle is really something that I really want to talk about, because there's so much more that the leadership can be doing to help women and to help empower women. And that's the conversation I want to have. It's about empowering. It's not like about shaming, as I know that.
Scaring.
Yeah, not about scaremongering. It's about pointing out how smart women are, and they can actually do things that, like, a lot of folks, and unfortunately in the American Academy of Pediatricians, are saying, women, don't you dare try this at home. right now. And I think that's a very disempowering message, and it's also incorrect. And I think that is a kind of scaremongering.
It's just so interesting to me. I keep seeing this over and over again. Saw it in the opiate crisis. I saw it with psychosurgeries. See it in COVID, and now we see it in nutrition. How when medicine in authority in medicine becomes centralized and bureaucratic, it becomes dogmatic, and frankly, the leaders in these centralized authorities start believing they're on some sort of holy mission. They convince themselves on one specific data set. It becomes their holy mission to deliver that. They refuse to change course, look back. I mean, just look at the food pyramid from way back. It was just completely wrong. And yet there were people on missions, on crusades to, push forward with the food pyramid. And this is bureaucratic medicine again. This is what this is. This is where medicine goes bad. When the authority is centralized, when the people in authority are on a holy mission, it harms patients every time. Again, I'll just look at the opiate crisis if you want to know how bad that gets.
And how many other examples do we have besides the opiate crisis, right? We have in the 1940s and 50s, gynecologists were drugging women with barbiturates during labor. And they were encouraging women who were nervous during their pregnancy to drink alcohol. And not to mention the fact that a whole subset of doctors were, doing commercials for cigarettes. So how many times have we kind of convinced ourselves that we are so much smarter than we are? How many times is it going to take before we realize that, we should kind of let go of that arrogance and let go of our ideology and keep an open mind? I mean, what I'm talking about right now is the fact that, women are Googling, make your own infant, formula, make your own formula, recipe to make formula at home. And when they do that, instead of finding helpful, useful recipes so that their babies don't potentially starve. I mean, if they go to a store and it's an empty shelf, that's a pretty panicky feeling. So, but instead of finding useful, helpful, time-tested, pediatrician-recommended recipes, they find whatever you do, don't make your own formula. They find warnings. They find warnings coming from the American Academy of Pediatrics. They find warnings coming from their local hospital. They find warnings coming from the news. Like, whatever you do at home, you can't possibly do it right. I mean,
I sent you a alert from the LA County Health Department, which was like, alert, be lookout for people trying to get formula, trying to make their own formulas. I thought, wow, Cate, what do you make of this?
That is insane. And that is disempowering. And that is scaremongering. I want to bring it back to that point because I've been accused of scaremongering myself and saying that, hey, this infant formula that we all assume is the healthiest possible thing. Well, first of all, we know it's contaminated with aluminum. Secondly, the whole reason that we're, not the whole reason, but a big part of the reason that we have shortages is because it's contaminated with bacteria, right? There was a factory, Abbott had a factory in Michigan that was found to be contaminated with a bacteria called Chronobacter sakei, which
Never heard of it.
Extremely common, apparently. I was looking up the news stories about this, and there have been reports on how this particular bacteria forms biofilms in factories. There have been reports on this for decades. And the only reason that this particular factory was shut down finally was because of a whistleblower, I think multiple whistleblowers that have been crying out about how much contamination is going on for a long time. So I guarantee that there are reasons that infant formula is more dangerous than people realize. And this isn't to scaremonger people. This is a reality check that this stuff is not necessarily as safe as they want you to believe. And I believe that women using real food ingredients that are given the proper guidance can do a far better job. Because one of the other things I've been accused of scaremongering about is the fact that the main ingredient in infant formula is seed oils, which are toxic. They are known to contain serious toxins in significant quantities. And that is the whole reason that I think that if women got real guidance about how to make their own formula, then they could do nearly as good as if they were able to breastfeed with a homemade formula made, from real ingredients.
And people who maybe don't know Cate, she is on quite a campaign with the oils. We should, Kayla, do we have her oil chart with the good oils, the okay oils, and the bad oils?
I don't think I have the latest one, but I'll try and find it on her website right now.
Yeah, because I'm sure it's up there. And seed oils, I always thought was the intermediate one for you. So seed oils are just no good, or is it that the toxins could accumulate in a child?
It's actually both. So seed oils are toxic for so many reasons that I'm actually writing another book after writing 2 books about it, that for new reasons. And so let me tell you, there's kind of like 2 categories of reasons that they're toxic. One is they cause immediate toxicity because they actually contain toxins. And the other is because of their fatty acid profile, they do something to our bodies that makes the body fat become toxic. And there was a really kind of shocking study on this. So in Denmark, they in the I think 90s or the aughts, about 10, 15 years ago, the most prevalent infant formula was made using corn oil, which is one of the hateful 8 seed oils that I tell everybody not to eat. It's toxic. And the fatty acid profile is the reason that these things are toxic, because the fatty acids in corn oil and soy oil are so unstable that when you extract them from the seed in the factory and then refine out the crude oil into something that's actually edible, they break down and they become toxic. And our body fat traditionally
carcinogenic, right?
Carcinogenic, genotoxic, cytotoxic, and pro-inflammatory. These things are just horrible. And the people who actually run the factories that do the work to try and make them as least toxic as possible have been warning us for decades that you can't make them non-toxic. We really should go back to eating like traditional fats, like coconut, like animal fats, tallow, and lard. And
butter.
So, but this and butter, yes, thank you, that's actually my favorite.
But you also last time we spoke had mentioned how you felt that some of the complications of COVID, the cytokine activation, was related to unhealthy fats. Did you ever get any evidence for that?
Actually, yes. About a year after I was on the Bill Maher show saying that if we had taken seed oils out of the food supply 5 years before COVID, we would not have anybody in the ICU under the age of 65 sick and dying from COVID, unless they had like a severe, underlying health condition, like, immune suppression, or were actively being treated for cancer. And the evidence for that, there's been actually quite a few arrows pointing in that direction. But one of the biggest and boldest was that the people who had cytokine storm were folks who had more of one of these fatty acids, that's a problematic one, linoleic acid, in their bloodstreams, because that fatty acid is actually a precursor to a lot of the pro-inflammatory compounds that the body produces to fight off infection. But when you have too much of this in your body fat, it produces them in ridiculous, there's no balancing, there's no ability to balance it out with the anti-inflammatory. So the body is just like so amazing. Even just like pricking your finger and bleeding for a second and then having that blood clot, there are probably 200 different enzymes involved in allowing it to bleed for just the right amount of time and then clotting. And they involve inflammation and anti-inflammation. So you need both. You need to have both so that you don't bleed to death or clot to death. And when you have all these seed oils, and particularly linoleic acid, in your diet, you have it in your body fat. And then COVID was just kind of triggering that to cause cytokine storm. And also another arrow was that COVID actually lives in people's body fat. It can kind of hide in your body fat, and it may be playing a role in long COVID. So yes, the biochemistry, the thing I love about biochemistry is you can predict, you can make predictions like I did, like based on the biochemistry, I predicted that was probably the case. And then it turns out to be, we have a lot of evidence.
Yes, that's called being a scientist. And to me, the fact that so many of our colleagues just go along with central authority, which is, we're prone to do that as physicians. But when you do that, or if you are prone to doing that, it seems to me you either weren't trained properly on science, or you're being lazy with the science, or you just don't understand. Maybe you never did it. Maybe you never got that training. But we are supposed to be trained to do it, the analysis, ourselves on behalf of the patient. And so that's why this is so important. Centralized authority often gets things wrong. They're just sort of guidelines. And it's different than, some of the American College of Physicians standards and things like that. Those are kind of different. These are sort of public health guidelines. And please, if COVID taught you nothing else, that public health is a mixed bag with mixed expertise and often wrong, and can't change direction and can't evaluate itself. Again, I just point at the food pyramid. Am I right, Cate?
It is, you're 100% on target here, because public health is hugely political. There's so much at stake, and it's political slash, big humongous business, right? Part of the reason that these seed oils are so prevalent is that they are almost dirt cheap, and they are so cheap because it is a subsidized crop, so it's cheap to grow. And the other thing is it's a commodity, so that it's traded on the stock market. And there's some really crazy things that these big companies do, so that they take advantage of buying short and selling short, so that they always win. And they need to use commodities basically in order to be a profitable company. And so if something is not a commodity, it may not make it into the food supply. And that has a huge influence on what is our policies, what are our food and nutrition policies, because money talks. I mean, you have to be, I think at this point, naive to say, oh, that's just dismiss it as a conspiracy theory, when it's actually not a theory, it's a business strategy.
Yeah. Let's see, before we go into the specific content of a baby formula, let me see if I can get some calls up here off Clubhouse. Claire, we're going to see if we can get you up to the podium. Let's see if Claire comes up. It's interesting how it takes people a while to get to the front here. I don't know what, we'll invite her to speak and see if she comes up. She did have her hand up. All right. Well, maybe we should just get into the formula and what you're recommending. Oh, wait.
I'm actually...
No, she can't join right now. Okay, go ahead.
So I don't have, I don't want to recommend a specific recipe or something like that. I want to give people guidance on what to look for in a recipe.
Okay.
And And I actually, because there are so many different reasons why you might want to choose or avoid a particular ingredient, right? Like, let's say that the child you can't get goat milk, right? So some of these recipes are based on goat milk, and some of them are based on like dehydrated powders. But the key is that what you want to look for is that the website has been in existence for a while before this whole scare came up, and that the website includes recipes that use fresh and not dehydrated ingredients. And some of the best are like Wellness Mama was one of my favorite. But what the good ones will do is they will help you start with an actual animal milk, either cow or goat. Those are the most prevalent that you're going to find. And then they will help you add multiple different actual real ingredients. So when I say actual real ingredient, I mean things like nutritional yeast as a source of the B vitamins, instead of just dropping in fake artificial vitamins from an infant vitamin pill, which I think you should do. But I think that you also want to get the real food sources whenever possible. So
I'm looking. Yeah, I'm looking at some of the other ones. What I'm looking at is the websites that say why you can't make your own formula. It seems like raw milk is what they're mostly pointing at as the problem. That not enough vitamins, which, as you just said, they put drops of Geritol in there, essentially, as such as it is, and raw milk. So if you avoid raw milk and put in natural products that give you adequate vitamins, what's the problem? People are that unreliable? I mean, are we that pathetic as a country?
So I was asking my mom, right? Because I wanted to say, what did you do, Mom? And I remember she had a copy of Dr. Spock's book. And Dr. Spock was the pediatrician that was so helpful to millions of women around the world between like 1940s and 1960s. And he was all about empowering women and about like not being rigid about anything. Like back in his day, one of the things he was fighting against was when babies were born, moms were originally, they were told back in the 40s and 50s, they were told, you have to feed your child on this schedule. Let me write it down for you. You need to follow it. There was no evidence for that, right? There was never any evidence for that. But doctors, hospitals, everybody got in line to do that until Dr. Spock came out and said, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, you got to do what the child is demanding. And here's how to listen to your child. Here's what to watch for. That was like really dangerous for him to do that, but he did it. And it helped millions of women because they felt empowered. It's stressful to be like, there's no breaking this rule. And that's where we are right now with the infant formula. And so I remember though, I mean, my mom said that she actually remembers that back even then, women were somewhat discouraged from doing anything themselves because of the fear that they would measure something wrong, or that they would use a spoiled product and that would sicken the child. And so that we are still struggling against, right? The idea that women are so like sloppy and careless that we just can't be trusted to follow a recipe. So some of Dr. Spock's recipes are unbelievably simple because of that. Like one of them is basically evaporated milk and molasses. And that's it. But there are millions of children who grew up on that and they didn't end up in the hospital. So just like the idea that their child has to have the exact specified, delicately balanced, you need like a sensitive scale to even create it in the first place, is not correct. Yeah. Children are not quite that sensitive, but we do want to follow a time-tested recipe.
Which, again, in terms of the balance, the other thing they seem to be getting very heated about is the balance of carbs, fats, and proteins, which to me seems like a pretty simple thing to set up. What should that balance be?
Well, we know that human breast milk changes during the course of lactation. So there is no single answer because of that, right? And in the formula manufacturers kind of gloss over that whole reality. But in the beginning, we know that like say, just to give example of the fat calories percentage is somewhere around 40. And as the lactation period goes on, the fat calories increase. And in some women, it's as high as 70 or 80%. And I'm sure there's a reason that nature does it that way. And honestly, I think that if formula manufacturers really cared, they would have accounted for that long ago, because that's been known for a long time. The other macronutrient, so that's fat. Another key macronutrient is protein. And women's breast milk naturally has about, as a percentage of calories, somewhere between 7 and 12% of the calories in the form of protein.
That's surprisingly low.
Yes, I was surprised too. And when you look at the differences, you find that the people with the highest percentage, actually the 12%, that was from a study in Africa, where at the time people were following a more traditional diet. And I think that we just know this is one of those things of what you started out this conversation was that we know so little about nutrition. There are a few things we do know, particularly what is toxic. But there's the human breast milk is such a miracle that it's not like there's just one pat answer for it. And to pretend that there is, I think, is disempowering, because it makes you think that you absolutely have to do it this one way or you're going to get it wrong. And I don't think we really can say that, but we do know that we want to keep it clean, and we want to use a time-tested recipe that has lots of attestations of, like, I did this and my baby was fine.
Yeah.
But
so
I
let,
really
let
think
me
we should be
I'm finish up.
Sorry, Jake. That we need help from pediatricians, and they are failing to step up. And I think that moms should get together and like create a petition that says, "Hey, pediatricians, you need to do better for us, because guess what? This shortage is going to happen again. There are weaknesses in the supply chain that have to do with how the stuff is formulated. We rely so heavily on palm oil and coconut oil because it has fatty acids that you really don't get in the American food system. And so we're going to have these kinds of problems with supply chain come up again. And between now and the next time this happens, I think the pediatricians need to step up.
Well, I'm looking at some quotes from pediatricians. They're making me furious. Here's one who says, well, you have to have the exact balance of vitamins and electrolytes, particularly sodium, potassium, and chloride. And without those, the babies could risk problems like seizure and brain swelling. I want to know how many babies have had cerebral edema from a homemade formula. I'm going to bet there's one reported in the literature from 30 years ago, and God knows it was probably just water or something. They just were giving the baby water or something crazy like that. That's the only way. A healthy baby, you're going to cause such severe hyponatremia or hypernatremia just because you don't get the sodium potassium balance exactly right. Impossible. I'm going to call BS on that. What do you say?
I agree, because when you look for the evidence that this has actually happened, it's really hard to find. I found one case report of an infant that was on a bizarre diet that I would never recommend. It was like a high alkaline vegan formula, right? Like no, that you should never have a baby on a vegan formula. We're mammals. We need, not vegan stuff. Our babies cannot live on plants. They never have, and no mammal ever will either.
That's normal.
So that
breast
was
milk is not
one
vegan.
Example. Right.
So Drew, I think that Dr. Cate has a hard out at 3:30. So.
Oh, you got to go at 3:30. You got to go now. Is that what time it is?
Yes.
Yes. Do you have to go right now?
Gosh, this time is blown. Well,
I know.
no, I do have some more time.
I'm the only one that saw it in the email.
Say it again. You what?
I do have more time if and I think until either the top of the hour or we run out of things to say about this.
Okay, top of the hour would be great because we're
I thought, okay.
We're not getting, we got to get into the weeds a bit on how people should
But that
go about
was in the
this.
email. Just want to make sure.
Okay,
that you guys
so keep going down the path of, how do you find reliable websites? What are the sort of parameters of good homemade stuff? How do you, and I know you're not giving specific recipes, but keep giving people sort of guidelines on how to properly think about taking things on, getting to this on your own.
Well, one of my favorite websites for infant nutrition and for nutrition in general is it's a foundation called the Weston A. Price Foundation. And I have a tiny bit of a love-hate relationship with them because Weston A. Price was this genius doctor whose sort of brand was appropriated by the foundation, and some stuff that they recommend I think is not particularly wise, but they truly are. When it comes to feeding babies, they are a fantastic resource, with a caveat of they're a little too crazy about raw milk, for reasons that just are not scientific. Like they say that you have to
they want you to use raw milk.
Yes, they want.
So let's agree. Let's you and I agree. No unpasteurized milk. No raw milk. No goat milk. Pasteurella, brucellosis. These things exist. Please, no. Right? Would we say that?
I would say for babies, you should have pasteurized milk. Now, me personally, anyone going to my website, you'll see that I drink raw milk. I'm a grown-up, right? I can tell if my stomach is hurting. And sometimes it actually has from raw milk, but I just like the flavor so much that I'm like, okay, I'm going to try another farm. But for babies, they can't talk, they can't tell you what's wrong, and they can get infected. Their immune systems are suppressed, and so I think you must pasteurize milk for infants at this point in our history, because we just don't have enough.
And what is the website again?
Weston A. Price Foundation, and
Weston
they have
A. Price. .org
Foundation.
WestonAPrice.org.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Let's see.
And so you're going to find some really interesting things said about them because of the organization more so than Weston A. Price. Weston A. Price was somebody who is not alive anymore. He lived and did some fantastic research in the 30s, 40s, and 40s, and he was so incredible that there are actually two foundations named after him. So one is this Weston A. Price Foundation. They kind of have the best resources for babies and children. And the other one is called the Price Pottinger Nutrition Foundation. But he was really, truly a genius. And his work revitalized my own life. And it's inspired me to write the book.
So it looks like butter and tallow, animal fats. He's big on that. Big on natural foods, real foods, from the ground or from the lake and from the farm. They get a little weird on COVID and vaccines and stuff, so be careful, right? Yeah. So let's just agree that we're only going to look at the the food. Are they pro breastfeeding? Are they okay with that?
They are hugely pro breastfeeding, and yes, when it comes to nutrition, their advice is really great, and that's the reason I bring them up.
So we'll stay with nutrition.
Of all these
nutrition.
Things
all right. Stay in the nutrition zone with them. Okay, got it. All right, and I can see why these government organizations get worried about some of this stuff because it's why you need to talk to your doctor. You know what I mean? And doctors, unfortunately, are being muscled by their authorities as opposed to thinking for themselves. That's the state of affairs in our profession is really starting to trouble me greatly.
I mean, when it comes to nutrition, we are absolutely pathetic because, the American Heart Association is leading the way in causing a lot of chronic disease because they recommend seed oils as opposed to things like butter. They were recommending, don't eat egg yolks. Now we know that egg yolks for children are essential for building healthy brains and healthy immune systems. The American Heart Association still controls the nutrition conversation, except for in this alternative world, which when you enter that alternative world, unfortunately, you also enter a lot of other things that I do not feel are particularly, scientific or valid or good to even see.
Yeah, that's really wild. That's unfortunate that we have to deal with that. That, when you, what a mess. What a mess. That's all. I'm sick of it all, guys.
But
true,
so getting back to
wait, there's a question. Hang on, I want to get a question out of here before I forget it from the restream. Who sponsors the American Heart Association? Do we know that?
That's a smart question. Procter & Gamble is one of the people who got the American Heart Association started. And at the time, their only edible product was made with cottonseed oil. Right? Their other products were soap, because that's you need fats to make soap. So they use cottonseed oil to make soap. But yeah, so it's Procter & Gamble, it's companies like Unilever, it's companies, of course, that sell drugs to people when they get sick, and also medical devices that when people, when you get your heart attack, you need your stent. So they are not sponsored by Big Dairy. I can guarantee you that. And they are not sponsored by, Big Egg, if there is even a Big Egg in this country. They're not sponsored by Real Food.
Big Egg, I love it. But Leopold also asked us, did you watch What the Health? I guess it was a Netflix documentary of some type. I worry about documentaries generally because they are not things that give you a balanced anything. They are they're just a point of view, and you don't get to hear alternative points. I really worry about. But anyway, did you watch that documentary?
I don't know, because I get them all mixed up. There's two camps in these kind of documentaries. There's like vegan, you got to be vegan, and if you're not vegan, you're destroying your planet and you're gonna give yourself cancer and everything bad. And then there's like the ones that like I kind of, well, I mean, they kind of celebrate like traditional stuff, and I favor those. Like I kind of love those. Maybe I'm biased, but I'm sort of a nature girl, and the other camp is about like our connection. To me, the other camp speaks to me because it's about our connection to nature, and they will interview folks like that are doing regenerative ranching and supporting a more sustainable kind of a food chain, but the conversation around sustainability has been contaminated by politics too. So we can't even have like a real a rational conversation. But I totally agree that the documentaries, they come across as having an agenda. So how valuable is that?
Yeah. Right. Even if they exactly. It just, it feels like propaganda, and I never know how much to believe and what an alternative position might be. And do you have a feeling about GMOs and all that stuff?
Well, yeah, I think that they're bad for the environment because of what we know about like corn and wind pollination, and how the genes for insecticide got into wild corn in Vermont, and then Monsanto sued the farmer whose corn was contaminated. Like that, I think, is wrong on many levels. But in terms of like, do GMOs have an impact on your health? Well, okay, GMOs are used to make highly processed food. And by the time that processing is complete, there's really no way there could be any viable DNA in there. And that's the fear, is that people's DNA will be somehow hijacked by foreign DNA, right? And that, that's an interesting theory. think once you know enough about how DNA works, you can completely debunk that theory. And I do, because I was working with DNA, like I had my hands on it in the 80s when, when PCR, one of the ways that we now understand, we read the human genome through this process called PCR. And, I learned how to do it myself by hand. So I understand DNA, I think, well enough to say that there's no human threat by consuming a GMO. You can't, your genes will not be affected by it.
Right. And it, and the alternative is famine, unfortunately. And we've done a pretty good job of avoiding that. I remember when I was in college and training in science, that's what we were predicting. We didn't see these breakthroughs in botany that have been so phenomenal in terms of preserving human life. But like everything, I'm sure there's some, downstream risks that it's the stuff we don't see coming, of course, that always is the worst for us biologically. But I feel like we have our eye on this stuff pretty carefully. I mean, just, the other thing, there's two things I always do. You look at evolution, right? What's the evolutionary adaptation? What's the evolutionary advantage to this, whatever, fill in the blank. And that's your answer. Whatever niche, whatever evolutionary advantage it gave, that's why it developed, number one. Number two, is anybody getting sued for the whatever they're doing? Because if there's even the remotest possibility of danger or fear or anything to anybody, the attorneys will get on that and sue it if there's even a theoretical potential for something. So if nobody's getting sued, there even the things that the attorneys sue for are not real oftentimes. They're possible realities, reaches. They always figure it out and go for it. Nobody's getting sued. We're pretty safe.
I just lost sound, so I'm going to refresh. Sorry.
Okay. All right. Excellent. I'm going to go to the restream while let me go to the
Okay, now I can hear you. I'm so sorry. I lost the sound.
You got me back. No problem. No problem. Let me go to a call here. Let me see if I can get Jennifer up here. Jennifer, you want to try to come up right now? See if I can get her up here. There she is. Jennifer, what's going on?
Hi. So I am seeing in my hometown where women are just banding together and just more willing to give away their own breast milk. Do you feel like that is a healthy, do you feel like there's, I don't know, I just get uneasy about screening and all that.
Yeah, go ahead, Cate. Good question.
Okay, so yes, it's a great question. And, I'm kind of excited that it's happening because it's women taking control, right? Whenever that happens, I'm already kind of on an uptick on the positive side because of that. They're taking control, and there's so many things in society that disempower women. That's an important thing to do. So the natural question is germs, right? Ew, isn't that a little gross?
Right.
And yes, it's a little gross, but life is gross. I mean, poop babies are all about gross. I mean, come on. You ever change a diaper?
I suppose I'm going to interrupt you, Cate. I suppose there's, given we're just speculating about risks and we don't have the evidence, I assume, and now maybe somebody does, there's a possibility that there could be some immunogenicity to this. There could be a positive side to this in terms of sharing germ exposures or whatever it might be, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Right. Yes, completely. And also that we are, to your one of your tools is evolutionarily. Well, we had wet nurses, we did this before. This is not the first time women have come to this as a solution. And people were hired as wet nurses. That was a job. The oldest wet nurse, here's a fun fact. The oldest wet nurse was 83. And that just speaks to how incredible the body is. If you stimulate, if you create the triggers to keep breastfeeding, this is well into menopause, isn't it? You can do it. So but yeah, I mean, I think you want to make sure that you do some basic things like make sure the person doesn't have COVID, right? You are taking a little bit of a risk at that point, but fortunately babies are Yes, definitely. All those kinds of things that do have a
Hepatitis.
slim chance of being passed through the breast milk. Absolutely, absolutely. And you want to make sure it's fresh too, right? Because contaminants grow in very nutritious things like breast milk very, very rapidly. But that's my opinion. As long as you go into it knowing that you want to be careful, you want to make sure there are risks. But I think in terms of the nutrition, it's going to always be miles ahead of formula, especially.
So let's say it this way. Let's say we're not taking a position except to say in terms of the nutrition, there's no doubt it's an advantage. How about that? I think that's a reasonable. And then Jennifer, what are you seeing people do? Are they actually doing this?
Well, I'm just seeing it from, like mom groups. My kids are actually 12 and 13 now, but I'm seeing it in just like Facebook groups, women kind of banding together and,
it's the age of the mom, I think, both in terms of getting the schools to behave themselves, getting this breast,
right.
Getting the baby formula straightened out. I really encourage, and I know that Cate is inspired by this, just the fact that women are empowering themselves. But I think it's even more than just, hey, you've got, you need to, own your power and take advantage of all the biological and intellectual abilities you have. I think it's more than that. I think it's time for the moms to step together and speak up and straighten out a lot of things right now, because
so I have a question.
Are out of alignment. Yes, Mom.
So if you're, I don't know if you mentioned this because I was kind of dual tasking a little bit. What if your baby's allergic to like cow milk or goat milk? Do they make soy milk formulas too?
Okay, so we said no. We said no raw milk, no goat milk. That's our first.
Or whatever.
Yeah. So, but yes.
Well, not raw, but
I understand.
Pasteurized,
I understand.
right?
But so allergies. What do we do with allergies, Cate? Jennifer, I'm going to put you back in the room. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Well done. Go ahead, Cate.
In terms of making your own, right, Susan? That's what you mean. You don't mean like, yes, of course they have formulas. Yeah. Yes. So that's a really good question. I have not seen that. And, that I would say that probably if there is such a thing, then, you would want to not use like store-bought soy milk, even if that's what they call for. You probably would have to really do a lot more from scratch stuff. But at this point, like that's a really tough one, because if your child really has an allergy and you don't have the option of like, no, and some people, their children seem to be allergic to their own breast milk, and the allergies issue is a whole different issue, and I'm not sure that right now I have a really great solution for that. But I do want to
part of it. Go ahead, point out, finish.
After 4, 5, 6 months, children, babies can start doing some solid, like real food, right? Like you can feed them egg yolks, you can feed them mushed up other meats. A liver is a super, super healthy food that my sister started her babies on that, and they grow up, they're 10 years old and 8 years old, and they love healthy food. They don't have sugar cravings. It's really incredible. What you start your children out early in life, it informs their cravings for the rest of their lives. And so I just want to point out that if your child is like 8 months, maybe, it's time to kind of start weaning them off formula. I think a lot of women who use formula find it so easy that it's sometimes what they do instead of starting to wean their children off of it. And that's the only reason I'm saying is like, well, if they're this year, pediatrician can definitely help you with how to tell when your child is ready to try some adult food. And there are cues. Like, for example, one of them is they can sit and control their head without assistance. That's very important. It means that they have the coordination in their tongue to swallow. So that's like another route is just go to start using adult food.
Susan, didn't we I guess we had 3 different formulas going. And as I remember, we had soy for Jordan, right? Isn't that right? Because he had colic.
He was so colicky, and I thought, well, maybe it's because he's allergic to the milk. Right. But then he ended up being the milk drinker later.
Right, that's true. And so it's important that and this is what I want to sort of parse out here. What do we mean when we say allergies? What are we talking about? Are we talking about intolerances? Are we talking about abdominal borborygmus, a lot of sound coming out of the abdomen? Are we talking about diarrhea? How do we know any of these things are anything What are we talking about?
I know that is a great point, because I've often thought that people are too quick to say, "Oh, my child is I mean, not people, but the pediatricians they get this guidance from their doctor, too quick to jump to, oh, well, then maybe they're just allergic to your breast milk, or maybe they're allergic to
Right.
cow's milk, and we have to go to soy."
Well,
Or
they
so
looked at the
there is
three,
no.
and two were fine, and one had colic, and they were like, maybe he's allergic. And then it was like, okay, we switched him over to soy, and then I think we switched Pauline over too, because she
I think it
had
was
horrible
just,
gas.
I think it was just one on soy is what we did, but who knows?
But I mean, it's just like you rule it out. When
well,
you have
it reminds me
three,
of how internal medicine does antibiotics, which is you come in, the complaints there, if you don't do something, the patient's going to be pissed. And so that's just what the pediatricians do in terms of their, try this is really what they're doing. They're not really doing something.
I had one with 100 percentile head, and the other two were like 80 percentile or something. And then they didn't, they measured the head. They made such a big deal about this, and I had no idea what they were doing. And then at 12 months or 13 months, found out he had a cyst in his left cerebellum. So they weren't even looking at the measurements and going, hey, one of your babies has a big head. Maybe we should get an MRI. It was just information that got lost, So it's good to, when you have them in multiples, you can kind of work, say, oh, well, this one's a little different. Well, the one who had colic wasn't allergic, but they switched him, just to see if it would help. Of course it didn't.
Take this Zithromax Z-Pack. That's what this is. That's what that is. Same sort of practice behavior.
Right. Well, we did have also the allergy to the antibiotics, and we had to switch them all over because I was allergic to antibiotics, so they put them on the non-penicillin,
Yeah, they've since had penicillins and they're fine.
Yeah.
So,
but I mean, when they're little babies, you can't take a chance,
Yeah, I get
anything.
that. I get that you're trying to be super careful and stuff. I get that. So there is that
Susan,
piece, which is you're trying to be extra cautious.
Susan, you bring up a really good point, is that it's helpful to have sort of a bunch of experience. And, women are not supposed to be doing this on their own. Our society is so structured so differently than what our whole way of rearing children really used to be about. We had grandparents, we had second uncles and aunts, we had so many experienced adults able to weigh in and troubleshoot and help us out, that these days, if you're not part of some kind of a network, you can feel, so on your own and alone. And that in and of itself can be panicky.
Many women literally on their own, literally, which is how do you do that? That's just we should be less. Look, let's not judge people for being alone, but let's not leave them alone. let's support them.
So thank goodness we have Facebook groups and social media and stuff where people can meet online. But it's almost funny that these days I've found that if you really want, when I speak to folks about nutrition and diet, the people who really appreciate it and resonate with it the most sometimes are actually farmers. And why would that be? Well, because these are people who have experience raising babies. As humans, we have a limited number of children, right? It's usually not more than 10. But they have raised literally hundreds of babies. And they understand how fragile and life is, and at the same time, how resilient it is. And they understand more than anything the importance of good, sound nutrition. Because farmers actually, I was looking this up to see if I could make this preposterous claim, that the concentrates that cows get seem to be more thoughtfully formulated than what human babies get, like the milk replacer that cows get, because for one thing, there's no seed oils in it. It's actual animal fat. And there's a lot, it looks to me like a lot, just more ingredients. So,
Isn't that interesting?
just goes to show you, yeah, that when you have the experience and you know how important nutrition is.
It's the bias against the animal fats. It's the literal, animal fat phobia that we've got going so thoroughly entrenched in our thinking that we're advocating for problematic replacements. And I don't know. Again, this is the centralized authority thing. Not allowing doctors to think for themselves, and it's not good. It is just not good. Did COVID not treat us that? Teach us that? I don't know. All right. So again, any other websites? We mentioned really a couple so far. Anything else we should be encouraging people to go check out?
Yeah, I guess like, on a related note, I think it's important to know who is feeding us the infant formula. And so the number one, like the companies include Nestle, and, you can look up like what is owned by Nestle, and it's kind of sad because there's almost no real food companies that are owned by Nestle. But there's lots and lots of just processed food and healthcare related stuff, instant food service. It's all about processed food and basically reusing the same ingredients that are in infant formula to create other products, right? By which I mean whey protein powder or milk protein powder and seed oils and sugar. Those same three ingredients are in like almost all of their products. And that's what they do.
Wow.
So just to see like who is actually feeding our children, and should we trust Nestle because they sell a lot of junk?
You're right. Let's quickly, before we wrap up, go over the FatBurn Fix and your recommendations on fats again, just so people get that. And Caleb, if you found her fat panel, her fat chart, there's the FatBurn Fix. But if you found the fat chart, I'd love to put that up.
They should probably go to her website. I couldn't find
the latest
go to the website.
One. All right, so you can tell us about it. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the website is drcate.com, and then you just Google good fats and bad, and I have a list of good fats and bad. And the good fats are fats with flavor. And so let me give you just a few of the best. We've got olive oil, we've got butter, we've got peanut oil. And let's see, another really popular one right now is ghee. At least it's popular among people who are really into nutrition. And avocado oil, super popular. They all need to be unrefined in order to be really, truly healthy. And and then the bad ones are, I call them the hateful eight. And I have a little song that I do about them now.
Okay, there we go. Go ahead.
You probably don't want to hear. Okay. Corn, canola, cottonseed, soy, sunflower, safflower, please. Carefully, 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 carefully read labels and check for these. So that's
Susan liked that one. Susan was into it. She's laughing from the other side of the room. And it's certainly everyone would know the tune. So that's good.
We're going to put it on a loop.
That's right. So I'd heard some criticism recently actually of olive oil, that it needs to be a certain kind of extra virgin olive oil. Is that true, or just any olive oil okay?
Well, any olive oil is going to be at least okay because of the fatty acid profile of the fruit. But it's true that the more that you refine any oil, the worse it gets for you. And so it's the reason that seed oils are bad is because they're kind of refined it to the absolute max. There's literally like 100 processing steps and multiple different factories they pass through. But if you can abuse any oil in a factory and make it not as healthy as it should be. And the lowest grade of olive oil, I think, is called lampanate olive oil because traditionally that was used literally for lamps. If people knew not to eat it. They burned it.
And I think I'm seeing why I was a little confused by the seed oils per se. I didn't think of, for instance, corn oil as a seed oil necessarily. And I knew that almond and peanut were on your okay list. So explain that all to me.
So the term seed oil is an imprecise term for the group of oils that are bad for us that I call the hateful eight, as is vegetable oil, right? So there is no really perfectly correct term because technically nuts are seeds, right? So how could so it's just that we don't have a good term for this, and that's why I came up with a hateful eight. You just have to memorize them.
Got it.
But the worst and the most common soy is by far the most prevalent. It's like 10 times more than the next most common, which is canola. And corn is up there too. So if you just have the brain space for 3, soy, corn, canola.
Well, just I don't know what ghee is. I admit I've been meaning to ask you that. What's ghee?
Ghee is what is clarified butter. So in India, that's what they use because it's tropical there, and butter will rot, will grow mold on it. So what they did, 1,000 years ago, was they heated a little bit, skimmed off the protein to make it less nutritious, and they clarified it that way, so it's more clear, and it's less nutritious, but it is fatty acid profile wise, it's the same as butter. Which is
I really just try to stay with butter, tallow, avocado, olive. And Leopold, who's been very informing me all the way along today in our conversation, that apparently some of the olive oils were contaminating their products with seed oils.
Yeah, because they're dirt cheap and olive oil is very expensive. That was a big problem in about the like around 2015 or so, and there was a bunch of exposés that came out about it. And in response, the olive oil industry got a lot better using some brand new technologies to verify the fatty acid profile and verify that it was really olive oil. So now if you buy like American olive oil, especially California olive oil, it's much more likely to actually be olive oil than it was 10 years ago. So that's progress.
And California and US as compared to Italian?
Italian is actually the most adulterated because it has this branding of being authentic. Yeah. And so they'll ship Italian olive oil to the Netherlands. Yeah, they'll ship Italian olive oil to the Netherlands.
So that's interesting. Susan, do you hear that? Remember that, because we have some Italian olive oils around. Do you hear that? Oh, she's busy.
Yeah. I bought some avocado oil. Just use that.
Okay. No, I'm just saying we just have to be careful with the Italian olive oils. They're not what they appear. Important conversation. As you know, I love your stuff. And when you said there's something important to discuss, I knew you would not disappoint, and you did not. If people, do you address this specifically in drcate.com, CATE, DRCATE?
No, people have been begging me for years to put up some good stuff about formula. I just haven't had the chance because I do the website myself. I don't outsource it to people who don't understand biochemistry
now they can watch
and nutrition.
This.
Yeah. That's a big reason why I wanted to do this, to get it out there. And I'm going to put this on my website instead. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
You got it. And have a nice week. And we will see you when I return from my little sabbatical here. Thanks, Cate.
Thank you. Night.
God bless you.
Okay. So there we go.
There was one question that I think I already know the answer to, and I responded to on the restream.
Let's hear it.
Somebody said, can I donate my breast milk if I am vaccinated?
Again, I imagine these are like local little small conglomerates of people doing this.
But I don't think...
Does the vaccine get in the way? No. A recent vaccine, I would not necessarily do that.
Like a week before or something?
Yeah, I mean, that spike protein, there's a lot of it around, and so I would worry about that.
Yeah, because it might transfer to the milk.
Yeah. I know there's some other, I can't keep up on all the questions on the restream.
Well, not when we have a guest. We should have done an AMA. Maybe this weekend we can do an AMA before you leave on Saturday.
All right.
If Caleb wants to. It's up to him.
Caleb, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking, yes, possibly. I already told my wife that we could do shows this weekend, and then I'll take like Monday and Tuesday off as the weekend instead.
Well, yeah.
So
you
or whichever days.
Week off.
And we have some.
Oh yeah,
we have some,
2 weeks off.
No.
We have some production to do too, so we can just do it all at once. Yes.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
Yes, exactly.
Let's do that.
But yeah, there were a lot of really good questions. Anything on the Clubhouse you want to answer or?
No. I think we'll kind of wrap things up. What's that, Caleb?
I know that I definitely showed this photo before already, but I just wanted to kind of demonstrate how hard mothers work. This is my wife pumped. This is from just one of the freezers that she filled up with breast milk. This is about half. You can see half of the counter here. And you can also just see exactly
Well,
how pleased
she
he
could sell
is.
that
I would
too.
say, first
Face.
of all, you didn't have to worry about the formula problem.
Yeah,
So
she's
maybe
got
you could help out some
good,
other folks. Maybe you
Well,
could
so
give other
here's
people a hand.
this is part of my point is that my wife
Yeah.
tried. We had so much extra. We had to get another freezer and put it in the garage because she just didn't want to run out before there were any shortages,
Yeah.
and she could not find
Yes.
any organizations that would take it because of the the caps. Like the actual bags that we use, they didn't want them because it has those plastic caps on and they wanted just plain flat bags. She's like, well, can't I just help somebody? Like somebody's definitely needs this. Some baby needs it. Nobody would
What's
take it.
wrong with the cap? That it has some contamination?
I think the reason why is that the way the organizations are set up, I'm assuming this, I think it's
Rules
because
are rules.
it's rules, and it's that they want to be able to have the flat bag so that they can transfer it from the bag into a bottle, as opposed to this is an all-in-one system where you just put the cap on it and it's already ready to go. So it was really, I mean, this was before the shortage. Maybe they've changed their tune a little bit here, but my wife tried really hard. She was going to drive an hour every 2 weeks. She was ready to drive an hour to give it to an organization to donate it, and nobody would take it.
Well,
So he
good for
gets it
her.
all.
Maybe she can find somebody.
This
I
happy
know,
boy.
you'll never have to. Oh my God.
My goodness.
Somebody said she's going to need a "Don't Tread on Me" bra after that.
I like just the fact that he's looking over his
I know, it's
domain.
a really cute picture.
This is the master of all his surveys. It reminds me of the pirate skeleton sitting on a pile of gold in Pirates of the Caribbean. This is his pile of his treasure.
Oh my God.
He has his treasure before him.
He's just
Oh my
thrilled.
God, it's so funny.
Isn't that
Oh my
funny?
God, he's such a cute boy.
Somebody's saying La Leche League might be able to help you guys out, so check that out. All right, we're going to wrap this up. Okay, so we will do something this weekend. Hopefully, I'll be a little more rested than I've been.
Yeah.
And we appreciate you guys showing up today. Thank you, Caleb, for producing. Thank you, Michelle, for wrangling things around so we could talk to Kate before I take off. And we'll come back and just do some Ask Me Anything type stuff on Saturday.
Then you can just ask questions.
Yeah, we'll just ask questions and chat and see what's going on. So, and that'll probably be, again, similar time zone, 2 or 3 Pacific, something like that.
And then we'll bid adieu to Dr. Drew.
Then I'll be gone for a few weeks.
I don't know if you want to do on Saturday too.
We'll see. But after this weekend, it'll be a break for sure. So we'll see you on Saturday for sure. And until then, ta-ta, as Susan says. We're going to dig into Chris next. We're going to see where this goes. Anything you'd like me to ask him?
Well, I mean, Team Chris at this point is kind of a sinking ship. So I think
I don't know yet. I don't know.
Bodied.
I see a lot of people jumping sides, and I just want to say that, come on over. There's plenty of food to drink. We got Ennie, we got Zolo. We're having a good time. Plus, we have far less principals, so we're having way more fun.
Wow. Okay, Professor. Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources at drdrew.com